Hi, Sydney. Let me hear your voice again. I'm not sure it came through real good.
Hello, hello, testing.
Yeah, works great. Works great. Oh, let's see. I want to check your recording. Yes, the recording is in process. That's good.
All right.
So, have you recovered from the NAU?
Pretty well. I really got lucky with my guest, just thoroughly enjoyed her.
Oh,
So
you
that,
had a guest. I didn't know that.
yeah, it was Joanne.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we were on the planning committee together,
Yeah.
and I knew she was looking for a place, and so I offered my house, and it was just a great bonus.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Had
Um,
had a couple of lovely evening conversations over a glass of wine that went a little too late.
um, wow. What congregation is she from?
A very small town in Michigan, like across the lake from Chicago.
Oh, I heard her describe that location.
Yeah. Yeah. And she had actually worked as the administrator at her church, was very, very involved. And um, just felt like they were headed down the wrong path and there was no turning back. And she, consciously fulfilled her obligations to the church and said her goodbyes and left, but they didn't have a big schism. They didn't have a big falling out or anything.
Well, so there wasn't a split.
Mm-mm.
She just left and is now her affiliation with anything UU is through NAUA?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I had a little interesting. Hi, Karen. I had a little interesting thing. I decided to relieve Sonny and Bob Cook a little bit on Sunday afternoon after the church service. So I took um, Dick Burkhart, Mona Lee, and Donna Brown on about a 3-hour excursion going down through Riverside State Park, stopping at various places. Um, the Bull and Pitcher, we went out on the suspension bridge, and then we stopped at 9 Mile Falls Dam. If you don't know, there's a cottage um, group there of original buildings from 1929, 1930 that helped build the dam. And then
Mhm.
it's now, it's kind of a historic site. So we were there, and then we went down to Old Fort Spokane, which wasn't open, but I'd recently attended a history class in which that era of the fur traders was a focus of the Spokane area history class. So I was able to talk to them about that. Then we drove up the Little Spokane River Drive and ended up for coffee and latte and quiche at the Little Garden Cafe just north of Whitworth,
Nice.
and then back to the Cooks so that they could reestablish themselves. But very interesting conversations with Dick, and I see Dick is there. Yeah, um, we had a good excursion, and
Good.
I enjoyed it. Donna Brown, who grew up in Spokane to about the age of 25, before she left, she went to Marycliff, which was an all-girls high school until Gonzaga became both boys and girls, and then the Marycliff Academy closed, is what she said. So that was good. Some of it was ruining for her. She hasn't been to Bull and Pitcher Park, she said, for probably 50 years.
Hmm.
Hello, everybody. Let's see. Who are we missing here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, Oh, we're missing Doug. Let's wait a little bit longer for Doug. I will send him a text while you all have a conversation. I'll mute myself here and you all have a conversation if you like.
Well, we're looking forward to the NOAA update since we missed the whole thing being back in Princeton. So.
Congratulations, Dick.
Well, thank you very much. I they had a very, very nice sort of like recognition and a reception and so on. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
150 people cheering him into retirement.
yeah.
Oh, man. That's nice.
I couldn't quite figure out whether, they were just happy to see me going out the door and were trying to get me to pick up the pace a little bit or what, but.
Great. Well, you did miss a lovely summit, but it's all recorded. So at least go back and watch the keynote speaker. That was
Excellent, excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
I was glad to see there was page 1 coverage in the paper.
Yes,
about
that was excellent.
good.
And I saved a PDF of that article in case anybody needs it.
Oh, yeah. Will you bring it to church, Dick?
It's on my computer.
Oh.
I could email it to, I'll email you a copy of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I can email a copy. I did to many other people. Someone emailed a link to a lot of others, but I actually went through and got the text in a readable form. So I'll send that out.
Great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have, still, I sent a text to Doug, so we'll wait a little bit longer. I have, I said this stuff, I have a mailing list that I send stuff out to. So I have the 5th principle summary of the first day of NAUA. I hadn't seen a posting of the 2nd. And then I have the text of, from Dick Burkhardt. And I have the newspaper article that was from Dick Burkhardt. And then I have the, some other information. Oh, I know what I want to send out, I'm thinking of sending out that I did get from Dick Burkhardt, and I want to make sure you're comfortable with this, Todd. It's back in December of last year, the Financial Times got into the UUA split. You were featured quite a bit in that article. I don't know how widely circulated that was, but I never circulated it to my group. Would you be comfortable if I circulated that to my group?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. But yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, well, I'll focus on NAUA right now since it's current news and then wait a couple of weeks before I send that Financial Times article out. Well, it's 5 after, so let's proceed. For you, Terry, welcome. And Karen and Dick, I don't, I'm just working off a 13-inch laptop, so I don't have the ability to screen share without kind of wiping out my whole screen. So the board members have an agenda and some of the handouts, and you folks are going to have to, the 3 of you are going to have to just kind of wing it while we go through some items that the board members will have some handouts for. So let me call the October meeting of the UUCS Board of Trustees together, here being October 23rd. And the first item on the agenda, number 2, is to amend and approve the agenda. So for you board members, are there any changes, additions, corrections, or deletions you'd like to make to the agenda that I sent out for everybody?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, we'll have the agenda approved as circulated. The next item was to amend, if needed, and approve the minutes of, actually, I've got incorrectly written down the August meeting, but it's really the September meeting, September 25th meeting. Any corrections,
Nope.
additions? Okay, seeing none, we'll consider the minutes of the September 25th meeting approved. And then the next item, and number 4 on my agenda, is update from Todd, and I had on there, and you can add others, I had a summary or update as you may care to, for the NAUA summit. Update on mission statement, and anything from the shared ministry team, and this might include you also, Liv, regarding the UUCS, UUA possible withdrawal or controversy or split, and the 7 principles. They were kind of lumped together. And then anything else you have, Todd?
Sure. Well, there's not much specifics to say about NAUA Summit, other than I could not really have been more pleased with how it turned out for our first summit. Obviously, there were a few technical problems at the start, and a few headaches throughout, but nothing overwhelming that just caused it to crush or really reduce much from the quality of the summit. But I think the thing to really take home for me was what I would call the proof of concept. I know it was a lot more than that. That sounds real businesslike, but it really worked. Everybody who came felt what we used to feel when we were with Unitarians, even Unitarians we didn't know or hadn't met before, and this was a situation where people came from all over the place, 2 different countries, and got along as if they had known each other their whole lives. And that is the way it's supposed to be with Unitarians. And I think those videos are going to go farther than anything. The videos of the summit will go farther than anything else to help encourage others to join NAUA. When they see what we experienced, they will see that we're on the right track. So I feel really good about this major step in what is really still the birth of a new organization. We'll obviously do some things differently next year now that we have a approved board and bylaws in place, and can go deeper into issues of structure, funding, membership, services, those sort of things, strategic planning. But as far as having been around for less than 2 years and having had an annual meeting, and I think there were Terry Anderson could probably tell us the exact number, but I think we had about 75 registrants in person, and at its height, that many devices were on the Zoom, and that doesn't count people who might have been streaming. And of course, we don't know how many people. There were a lot of couples that were joining on Zoom as well. So just a really good turnout. And then we have seen like the keynote address, the number of people that have watched that address since John Wood actually gave it has doubled on YouTube. So it's getting a lot of attention.
Do you know how many in person there was, on average, not maybe counting the address by Wood?
Sorry, Tom, I didn't quite hear that.
Do you know how many were in person, not, not counting the ones that might have come specially for Wood?
No, it didn't change much. I can say that.
Okay.
We had a few people that came just to hear Wood, but for the most part, the numbers were relatively the same as far as they were mostly members who had subscribed or registered, I should say, to be there. So it was marginal. There was in fact, I was surprised that more folks didn't come to hear Wood, especially from Braver Angels. I know they got the word from both him and Shane Groenholz, who is a member. Shane came. To my knowledge, he was the only one active member that from the local branch that
Mm.
came, but a newspaper reporter came, obviously, and she, to my surprise, she did not interview John Wood. She interviewed me, but she sat through his whole lecture and obviously did a fantastic job. I was very impressed. Karen may be able to explain this phenomenon better than I can. But she just had a notepad and she interviewed me and, you know, just jotting down notes while being extraordinarily conversational. And she got the quotes absolutely correct. I mean, and she quoted me a lot, so I was really impressed with, I don't know what she was jotting down that fast, but, and she did the same thing with John Wood's lecture too, and just really wove together a really nice summary of what he said and where he came from and what he's about. So I don't think we could have got a better local press than that.
Hmm. Do you think she had a recording device that wasn't visible as well?
It's
To get-
possible she,
No,
no, it's possible she was recording on her iPhone.
she could have, if she did, it was tucked away. She wasn't wearing any coats or anything, so I didn't see anything like that, but maybe so.
Mhm.
But
Just,
that's what we all did in the old days, just took copious written notes.
Yeah, I mean, I swear she was writing down, you know, just like this, but never really took her eyes from me, and it was really,
wow.
anyway, however she did it.
And
I'm
maybe
glad.
you knew shorthand.
She might have maybe she did know shorthand.
Yeah.
She's been doing it for a long time.
In
Question, Todd, are all of the NAWA videos available on YouTube or elsewhere?
Yes, you can actually you can go to our website and just go to watch services.
Okay,
And right now, they're still sort of at the top of the list, so they're right on that page.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of in answer to my own question, I heard one of the organizers say that there was about 75 to 80 in person at one of the group sessions. So that gives us about the same number online as in person.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
and I
right.
can speak to that in terms of the registrations, and I don't know the exact numbers, but there was about 55 or 58 who in face-to-face who paid to register, and about 75 online who paid to register. But there was others who came for the Sunday service and others. And I just wanted to again reiterate and thank the you folks that you or us folks, I guess at Spokane, that the technology, like to run a conference face to face or to run it online, is relatively easy compared to running them at the same time, both. And I think we pulled it off with only a few minor glitches. We will get to the evaluations from both the online people and the face-to-facers. But I think everyone was relatively happy, and it's because you have a great facility for it. And the technology that you guys have invested in, it worked, and the skilled people who were running things. And so it was, I was quite relieved.
Yeah, and some of that you'll never see recorded because some of the best sessions for those of us who were there were in the small group sessions of 5, 10, 12 people, because again, we got to know each other and really talk honestly with each other.
Yeah, that's good. And Lynn, well, for those of you who don't know, we took up a collection from the NAUA people to defer some of the costs that for the church. And Lynn, what do you recall what the amount was actually collected?
Yes, and thank you, Tom, for answering my phone call the other day. I was about to go deposit that envelope of money into NAUA's account, and then I realized I don't think this is for NAUA. I think it's for UUCF. So I promptly turned around and took it back to Rebecca, and it was just over $400 that
Wow, that's really
people
sweet.
just tossed money and checks into a basket that was sitting right by the door, and then Don Willingham counted that with me, so there were two of us, and I believe Rebecca and Lynn took care of that at church yesterday, so
Wow,
thanks to the NAUA folks.
that was really sweet. Yeah.
Good. Did you want to move on, Todd, to just update us on this attempt to find a mission statement? Or do you have more on NAUA?
Yeah, no, I have nothing more on NAUA since there's no more questions, and let me just bring that up. Yeah, so the mission statement is a mystery. Rebecca can't find it. I can't find it. My recollection from years ago when we started talking about creating a shorter version of it was that it existed in some of our documents, and we can't find it. The mission statement we say every Sunday together. So generally a mission statement like that is in the bylaws, it's sort of the Article 1 of the bylaws. So I guess it will be a matter of the congregation at some point, or if the board wants to put it somewhere else, but I think it probably is something that needs to be entered into the bylaws formally.
Well, when I answered the question posed by Judy Gammon, which is what kind of started all this, I researched the Articles of Incorporation, the bylaws, and I found that there's very much in those documents, particularly the bylaws, statements of our purpose and things that are very much akin to what might be considered a mission statement. I also remember that Julie Jose some time ago, Lynn, you might have recollection of this, that Julie tried to refine something and reduce it to fewer words, whether that was a mission statement or a covenant. I'm not sure. Does any of you have recollection of that? I'm going to make a note to ask Julie about that. Okay, then any report either through Lynn or Todd about from the shared ministry team, on any progress about how to deal with the issue of consideration of withdrawal from UUA, and or how we might immortalize, for lack of a better word, the 7 principles, since they were not proved to go in our bylaws.
Yeah, I think and Lynn can help me out. The shared ministry is certainly interested in helping with the former part of that question, as far as getting the congregation into conversations about further conversations about whether or not to remain in the UUA. We hadn't really thought about the 7 principles. My thinking is that was handled during the last annual meeting, when the congregation clearly voted not to put them in the bylaws after some discussion. At that point, if the board wants to put them someplace prominent in the building, or anybody could do that. I know they have lists of them in the RE wing, but if somebody wanted to put the traditional list somewhere in multiple places, we're welcome to do that. But I don't think it really requires any action from the congregation at this point. The congregation has, I think, made that decision at our last board meeting. But regarding the congregational conversations, we will focus more on that at our next shared ministry team meeting, to try to figure out specifics about coming up with a plan about how we will involve the congregation, and of course make reports, and then give those reports to the board, so that maybe some of that stuff will be the congregation. The goal is to have the congregation comfortable with whatever decision it might be before they encounter the question at an annual meeting. Melinda, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit more detail at the last shared ministry. My recollection is that we had a date planned for a Zoom meeting on a Sunday, January 12th. Do you recall that?
I think that's right. Let me check my.
That we would be really just opening up questions and concerns in a similar way to the report that that was sort of smaller, that was sent to the board last year, but maybe just giving people more time between now and January 12th to think of questions, thoughts, concerns. But and you can correct me, Todd, if I'm incorrect about this, but we don't have an agenda for that meeting. More of a as far as we want to leave the UUA or we want to stay with UUA kind of agenda. More of a what are other people concerned about or not concerned about, or getting just more of the opinions and thoughts of the congregation and just documenting those things. Perhaps certainly answering questions, because there are some specific answers to concerns, like things about not being part of a national organization or staff benefits, those kinds of things that we can now address because we have answers to some of those kinds of concerns. But just really opening it up and then delivering that information. Of course, the board would be more than welcome to join us. We kind of got the impression that the board did not want to do these kinds of conversations themselves, but if you do, we're more than happy to just piggyback with you to do that. So just getting people talking about the topics so that if and when we decide this needs to move forward, it sounds like we need to make some sort of decision that would happen at the annual meeting, and so that we would at least have had the people who are interested and wanting to talk about it have opportunities to do so. So far we have January 12th on our calendar with not a plan, no plan yet. We're going to make those plans at our next meeting.
What I have had in my mind, and then some of it kind of contributed by others, would be at such a meeting that that report that you previously, you asked questions, you had a report that might be recirculated as background information prior to a meeting. And that as a result of that meeting, it would be very handy for the board if the shared ministry team would make a recommendation to the board about how to handle it, including very possibly even a resolution that might appear to be at the congregational meeting. And then the board would decide whether to accept that carte blanche or to whether we would want to modify it a bit. Does any of that sound foreign or out of place to you, Lynn or Todd?
I think we should discuss it. I personally don't have an issue with that. It would be okay for us to look at the data that we get and report that to the board and give a soft recommendation and maybe a resolution with the understanding that we would want others to back it, not just coming from the shared ministry team. But we can talk more about that at our meeting in January and see how others are feeling. What do you think, Lynn?
Great.
Okay, and regarding the 7 principles, I think I'll add that as an agenda item for next month. And maybe, as you say, it's a simple matter of just deciding to maybe post it in the Friendship Hall in some kind of an attractive manner and possibly asking for donations if it's to be something, fairly permanent and maybe attractive wood and some kind of special kind of lettering, maybe ask people for design ideas. But I think I'll just add that to the next agenda for the board to think about that and have a discussion.
Yeah, I have a comment too, Tom.
Yeah.
About the UUA. They used to have open board meetings. You could comment in the chat and all kinds of things like that. They seem to be more and more in shutdown mode. This last board meeting, which was supposed to be this last Monday, I wasn't able to get to it. We were just getting home then. And I looked at the board agenda, and the only agenda said it was going to be a 2-hour closed meeting, not open to the public. And this has been happening more and more often, sometimes at least half or more, in this case, the whole board meeting is not open to the public. And you have to wonder what they're discussing, but it tells me that they must be under increasing stress.
Yeah, that's certainly not the way traditionally executive sessions are held. They're from an open meeting with an announcement of generally what's going to be discussed and then
Yeah,
getting.
there was nothing about that. It was just a closed session. And so you have to wonder there are things they're discussing. They don't want to be discussed in public or even known in public.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a violation of the nonprofit law in Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, it's possible because the record's open to the public. And
Yeah.
the last few times I've been able to go to their board meetings, the only part they've had in open session, there's like sort of pro forma adoption of this or that. You know, the real discussions in most cases have apparently already occurred.
Mm.
Right.
And we do know that in September, I wasn't able to get to that. They had this update on the bylaws rewrite. And that looked pretty scary to me. So they may be going along with that, or maybe they're worried about what the impact of that's going to be.
Well,
It's hard to really know at
obvious-
this point, but they're under stress.
yeah, obviously we can't do anything about it, and whatever they do, we just I don't, as far as I'm concerned, they're in la la land and we have to deal with reality.
Yeah,
first.
I've been sort of taking the point of view that maybe a few of us could hang in there as the resistance, the internal resistance to keep monitoring things. We don't know exactly what is going, but it's always helpful to know a little bit more about what's going on than nothing about what's going on.
So I have two more things to discuss. One, I wanted to let you know that I got with Rebecca earlier this week, and we looked over our membership book or list of members, and try to come up with some ideas for some potential team members to form a new team. I'm calling it the social activities team. And it's kind of going to be a combination of a new emphasis and also an old emphasis on membership. Currently, our membership system is that we have done recordings of our orientation program, and we can direct those interested in being members to that, and then they can have further discussion with me, and if they want to join, they can join at that time. What we're lacking really is the group that used to put together the new member celebration during our worship service, and then some kind of event celebrating them. It used to be a potluck, but I think cake or something like that during that same service would be good. But this team would hopefully put together, initiate a monthly potluck after one of the services. Hopefully that might encourage people to come more in person from time to time and enjoy the camaraderie of others, as well as bring back an annual dinner of some sort to celebrate the work that we've done as a congregation. Perhaps take over the Thanksgiving luncheon, which has become kind of a tradition over the past 3 years. And then take on that piece of organizing the new member ritual that we'll have on one or two Sundays a year, whatever it might be. So I've already have three really quality individuals, some of whom who haven't really served on a team before. And I've got some calls out to a couple of others I'm looking forward to hearing back from. So just want to let you know that that's in the works.
Well, let me comment on that. If it sounds like you'll be identifying people, that would these be appointed by the board to like a committee? I realize that the operations team has to approve a committee, but do you need the board's involvement in order to make this happen after you've kind of screened people, if that's might?
No, I don't think so. I think you're right. I think the bylaws still require the ops team to approve the the start of a new team, so that should be pretty easily handled. And as long as folks agree to serve on it, we should be good to go.
So this should kind of be an extension of the ops team if it's not going to be an appointment by the board. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a board of, I don't think the board would appoint this kind of team, since it's not,
Okay,
it's kind of a regular team, yeah. I mean, it's a combination. We sort of looked at the list and said, well, rather than have two teams, we've got enough people for one team. So let's have one team that does two things,
yeah.
two teams that do one thing.
Well, it kind of fits in with some of the other items down further. The other one, though, that we did have down below in item 5.6 would be kind of a welcoming team to when new people come in, or either online, and that's the difficult part that I'm not familiar with, or come in new into the service, that there would be somebody that might be making a point and a specific effort to reach out to them. Would that be part of what you see this group doing possibly? Or is that overdoing it for them?
Yeah, that would be overdoing it. I'm pretty sure they don't want to take on the traditional things that a membership team did, which are largely being covered in other ways now. We did used to have a volunteer send out letters to the folks who had visited, and that's also fallen away because we lost the volunteer who was doing that. So that might be something we would reinstitute at some point. But right now, I'm pretty happy with working on these, what I would consider broader issues of getting people engaged with each other.
Okay, well, we can discuss this a little bit more about the welcoming aspect, both online and in person, down when we get to item 5.6. So you had a second item that you were.
Yeah, the other item is I'm planning on taking my study my regular study time in February, as I have been doing, which would have me out for the month of February this winter.
Yeah.
But more significantly, I would like to in lieu of a sabbatical, since it doesn't seem like I'm ever really going to be able to take a sabbatical. I mean, I should have one about every 5 years, and it's going on, moving towards my 14th, I guess now. But I would like to take about 5 months after February to withdraw from most of the management responsibilities that I have right now. We're in a good shape, I think, with Rebecca to handle most of that, and just to continue doing the sermonizing, three times a month as I have been, and I'll still come in once a week and check on Rebecca and sign checks and that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty tired. It's been a tough 5 years. I'm stressed a lot, and I would just like to take a break as much as possible from some of the stuff that overwhelms me at times. And so I don't know, I can't take a full sabbatical, but I think I'll take a sabbatical from management and just kind of observe from afar, but try to do some things that make me happy, have a little more time to myself for a bit.
Well, does this change the job description for Rebecca? Does she need additional compensation if she's going to assume things that she's not now doing? Help us out in that area.
I don't think so, because what I have tried to do really is put people in, get staff in positions who can actually keep the day-to-day stuff going. So I don't feel like Rebecca, of all people, needs my oversight. What she will need is protection. And I've talked with the shared ministry team about this. And what I mean by protection is just to keep a horde of people coming at her, you know, sort of with the stuff that they often hit me with. So there would have to be a sort of a line of communication with her. So, you know, for example, if the board wants to communicate with Rebecca on, you know, things that you know, it would be stuff that you discussed in a board meeting, and you would decide, you know, well, who's gonna speak with Rebecca about that. Luba might be a good one since she's the board liaison in most cases, but that sort of thing. And then if Rebecca has any questions, as I say, I'll interface with her at least once a week to give my advice or suggestions or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I
Can
think we need to settle in on how to do that. Whether it be Luba or whether it be me as president or whatever. Yeah, let's kind of solidify a process before before the end of February rolls around.
Well, before the start of February, can I just speak from the point of view, the shared ministry team, as we are supposed to do, really looked over the ministerial agreement to try to figure out how this would work. I mean, the February thing is a easy thing because we've done that several times before. But there's no language in Todd's ministerial agreement related to sort of a sabbatical light, if you will. And really what we are asking and Todd particularly needs, and I think that people from the board can be so helpful in this because we have so many members of our congregation, not a ton, but plenty of members of our congregation who aren't sure the sort of the order of operations. Who do I go to talk to about this? Who do I go to talk to about this? And rather than ask any questions or try to figure that out, they almost always go straight to Todd. And so if we could have all of us really help educate members of the congregation on what's important to go to Todd with, and then there would be certainly during this 5-month period from March to, what is that, March, April, May, June, and then into the summer, I guess. February is included in that? You're back in June?
I think he said
Okay.
after February, didn't you?
Yeah,
So-
about 5 months after February. Yeah.
So 6 months total, so including February, yeah. But ultimately that that people know how to get their questions answered and not have to do that through Todd. So it's sort of a somewhat gatekeeping, but not, you know, it's not meant to keep people away. And Todd will be there certainly on Sundays. But to just do a better education job of what is Todd's and what is not Todd's.
Okay, it sounds like we need some guidelines. Is that some guidelines that you guys have roughed out? And do you want those, this seems to me they need to be shared with the congregation. Does that come from Todd, the shared ministry team, or the board? Do you all have thoughts on that?
Well, Todd, can you share a little bit more about how that when we used to have the Healthy Congregations team, right before we had a shared ministry team that did some of this, and they sort of set up some guidelines about this. Is that correct? Am I correct on that, Todd?
Yeah. That was the first time I took just a month off, which, by the way, people don't know I'm supposed to take a month off every year. I never do. But where I just disappear, and that healthy relations team really worked to educate the congregation that, you know, Todd is going to be out of pocket. But what they did is just set up a system where there were people that you would go to, before people would come to me. So for example, if it's a pastoral care issue, somebody is dying or has died, obviously, someone should contact me, right? And I want to know about that and be involved if I can. But other than that, it was just, keeping people from communicating with me for that month, or particularly over small things that could wait. And there were people in place to field those, to make those decisions. And in that case, it was the Healthy Relations team. I think people would go through Devon and she would decide, where it was at. I don't think anybody ever did disrupt me for that month. The congregation was very, very respectful of that time. So this will be a little bit harder because I will be visible. And I mean, I recognize two things. One, the congregation can't afford for me to take a sabbatical and have somebody else here. And two, if I was truly gone from the congregation at a time like this, it would be, for 6 months. I mean, it would wreak havoc on the congregation to not have my presence in the pulpit on Sunday. So of course I'm not going to abandon that. So I'm just really asking for a break. And I think it's the same thing. It'd probably be the shared ministry team would be the team for folks to go through if they have questions about whether or not they should reach out to me. And I think it's the same thing with Rebecca. I think that when people are needing to go to her with issues or questions or help, largely be the board that it be discussed in a board meeting. So there's she knows that it's authentically coming from the board, and then the board can decide who will make that contact.
Well, you just kind of said something that was on the back of my mind, and that was that this Healthy Relations team function sounds like it might have the closest fit to the shared ministry team. Am I not?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be part of the go-between or the buffer between the membership and Rebecca. And then other issues that would come to the board, we would try to have a single contact to Rebecca so that, that she's not inundated by multiple board members. That sounds like what you're talking about to me.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Okay, then that needs to be outlined somehow and the congregation informed about this in advance of, or during the month of February, or preferably in January, it sounds like.
I remember there was conversations a couple times that a couple of board members would sit around in the church after the meetings and to kind of take issues from the congregation. These are loose conversations in a variety of times, but then try to direct them to the right team. So I think mostly what the board member would do would be hear the problem and try to direct to the right person, meaning 2/3 of the time you're not solving anything, you're kind of redirecting it. But I recall, did anybody ever recall conversations of that nature?
Well, they were, in my recollection, those were kind of for some specific issues that were defined, that there'd be a board member to handle questions. But part of the report that'll come later is that we have maybe every week or every other week have a board table with 1 or 2 board members at, just so that people could interface with the board. And this sounds like that would be a way, that this would be another way to make this work.
If I were just a church member or a friend and they needed answers, what would be helpful for me as a visual person is to have somewhere online or physically a pie chart, like this problem, go there, go here, and go to that person or group or team.
Sounds good to me.
It's quite difficult, though, to anticipate what people are going to, because people find certain issues of their own to be very, very important to
Yeah.
them, and they are.
Right, but they
They
all
are
can-
not necessarily something that needs to go to Todd, and that's what
Oh.
we're asking the education from all of us, the shared
Exactly.
ministry team and the board.
Yeah.
And anybody else who
Yeah.
kind of understands. It is very difficult for people to differentiate, okay, this isn't urgent, but because it sometimes is to them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so-
that's exactly what people need to understand, and those things can be categorized like urgent things, daily, whatever, routine, etc.
I think we can work on this at at our next meeting and refine this a little bit, because as Lynn points out, it's, you know, you could do all the projecting you want to about ways to handle this or that, and you're gonna, you know, you're going to miss the mark about 50% of the time. And we can take questions and inquiries from somebody and say, we'll get back to you on that. And then either the board or that person, the board member, or going through me to someone on the shared ministry team, we can decide, okay, in probably 3 or 4 days, we could get back to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
You
it
know,
sounds to
by
me too,
interacting.
it does sound to me too, like you, I mean, this is, I know coming up later in the agenda, but if you're planning on having board members there at a table or a board member, I mean, I think it would be great to share that sort of a responsibility with the shared ministries, particularly during these particular months while Todd is gone, because between all of us, we can put our heads together and say, yeah, this is something, that we'll keep it in mind. And if it's something we have to address with Todd, we'll put it on a list. Or, if it's that urgent, we'll get it to the right person, or we'll redirect it. But certainly, I mean, that's a great opportunity for ongoing education for the congregation.
Yeah, well, let me, because we could have this discussion, a prolonged discussion, let me put it on the November agenda to try to be a topic where we can spend 10 or 15 minutes and refine some of the thoughts we've tossed around here.
Great.
Okay, now we're down to the president's report, me. Very briefly, under 5.1, I did join a Zoom meeting at the invitation from the UUA's Pacific Western region. There were four staff members that my understanding is they are staff members for this region, which encompasses maybe 8 to 10 Western states, maybe 3 of the previous districts. And there were about 10 or 12 presidents there. Some were presidents of congregations, some were presidents of boards. Most of them were from very small congregations that had no buildings, they had no minister. So their issues that they were discussing were not too common with us. There was one other larger church in the Seattle area, and quite frankly, the person didn't identify themselves. But there were some common concerns. The common concerns were shortfalls of budgets, how to welcome new people. Very few of these people had any online presence. So they were mostly talking about people who come into the door. Some of them were meeting in living rooms of people's houses because of lack of a physical facility. They were concerned about their stagnant or dwindling membership. They were concerned about how to develop leadership among the people they have, given that many of them were doing everything for so long they were burning out. There was a question of, let's see, leadership. Well, I think I covered all of the things: membership, leadership development, their facilities and things like that. So I don't know whether I should try attending the 2 other meetings they were going to have, which would have involved churches in larger states other than our Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. So that's kind of a report on that. it was so scattered, there wasn't really a written report. Regarding the finance team appointee, I did talk to Donna Borden Rhodes, and she's agreed to join the finance team and to chair it as long as she's not expected to go call people up or knock on people's doors and ask them to give money. Let's see, vacant trustee position, I talked with Jan Wingenroth this afternoon. And due to the lack of presence of some of the people on the committee, they haven't had a chance to really solidify anything and come back at us. They did determine that two of the names that came forth were not members. They were here on a kind of regular basis, but had not ever joined. Another gentleman is a member and is interested in participating somehow, but they recently had a baby. He and his wife just recently had a baby, and he'd like to be contacted in a few months. So they're still working on it, but they don't have any report. The apartheid, the item 5.4, the apartheid-free congregation update. I heard from Nancy Avery. We will get a written recommendation next month, but they would like the board to consider the board taking a position, and they'd also like to have this issue brought before the congregation at an annual meeting. So that's the verbal report, but a written report was going to come from us from their Social Justice Coordinating Council. Let's see, this is a question to the shared ministry team. Did the comments from Cindy get to the shared ministry team regarding things that are going on in Jacksonville? Maybe the two of you can answer that.
Yeah, I did send that information to Todd. So what I observed was pretty bare bones. They're just considering if they want to continue to be a part of the UUA. They had 4 questions that they were reflecting on, and they were voting using little sticky dots. I passed those questions along to Todd, and then I believe he was going to take them to shared ministry.
It's possible the process that they used, Lynn and Todd, of having some large questions, if this is what I understood, I did talk to Penny Reed a little bit, some large questions or something that were key questions, and then people expressing their interest by putting dots on something, either a dot of they're interested, or maybe even a hierarchy of first, second, or third choice. But maybe that kind of process might be something that would be of use. I see Dick's hand is up.
Yeah, I know that Jacksonville Church has had some very strong activists, people like us who have gotten that congregation really thinking about these issues. It's not just putting up dots in some meeting. Like there's this guy, Terry Keller, who's actually visited quite a few congregations in the Southeast, almost like a traveling troublemaker, you might say, just to get them thinking about some of these issues. So people actually, most congregations, most people don't really understand what's going on. And that was been her and the goal of some of theirs, to get congregations really engaged in some of the issues. And they've succeeded in Jacksonville. It's not, Jacksonville isn't any different. It's that they've actually become engaged. And it would be nice to know more about the full engagement process. I know it's been probably the last year or two or more where they've really gone through a series of engagements of some kind or other.
Yeah.
They have a 16-member task force. They have a huge task force that has been put together by their board for an 18-month process that they are just beginning. So Cindy watched their first meeting. And it's my understanding they did it a sort of a hybrid thing, or at least they recorded that on Zoom. I don't know how many attendees were there on Zoom, because I don't know how you do the sticky note thing or the sticky dots that way. But Jacksonville is a congregation to absolutely for us to keep our eyes on, and they are keeping their eyes on us. We are ahead of them in things like removing our endowment from the UU Common Fund. And they had a lot of legal questions when they reached out to me about how we went about with the work with our endowment. And we did most of our stuff so far without legal in anything other than maybe Mary Giannini giving some input, but we didn't hire a lawyer. And so the people are not certain about what they can and cannot do, and they're fearful that the UUA is going to tell them you can't leave, or you can't, or we're going to take all your money. So, or whatever they're worried about. They're worried about some of these things, and so they don't know how do you go about that. So they are just beginning their studying on this, and it is going to be a long and 18-month process, is my understanding.
Yeah,
Do you happen
Yeah.
to know how big the church is?
I do not. Does anybody else? I mean, we could go on the UUA website and find out how many members they have.
I think there are like 2 or 3 churches in Jacksonville area. And I'm not sure if, I don't think they're the biggest one, maybe middle one or whatnot.
Hmm.
And there's been some, in one of the churches, maybe the biggest one, there was some real turmoil in recent years, like Ken Christensen was very, very active there on interracial issues. And he basically got thrown out because he challenged the woke ideology they were doing. And so I think that's one reason why this church we're talking about now, has gotten engaged, and they could see locally the impact of what was going on.
This church, I do think, is incredibly admirable. It's incredibly admirable to me that they are attempting to do this without a split, knowing how controversial this issue can be with particularly people who aren't paying that close of attention. So they are spending a significant amount of time educating their congregation and answering as many questions as they can, and trying to figure out how they're going to lead through this process. If they do intend, they haven't made any decisions yet, if they do intend to leave, but their ultimate goal is to stay together. And it's really impressive to talk to them and listen, see how they're going about doing that. But they are at the very, very beginning stages. So thanks
Yeah.
for going to that, Cindy. That was
Yes.
great.
when I talked with Penny a little bit, there were issues that we're ahead of them on, as you mentioned, Lynn, like we've already modified our articles of incorporation and our bylaws to clearly define our process to withdraw. And then, and so they were looking at, what do they do? So that goes on. So I see a note from Todd that I don't understand. It says Todd's requesting you to allow multiple presenters to share. What is that?
Well, I was wanting you to give me permission to share the screen. I'll put up the 4 questions that Cindy sent me. If you're interested, I think to do that, Lynn, you might know. I'm trying to remember how to.
Yeah.
I've got I can do an allow or decline. But what I'm concerned about is whether this, at this stage, is important enough because of the other items we do have on the
Oh,
agenda.
yeah, sure, no problem.
But is it something you can do in 5 minutes or so?
Yeah, even less.
Okay, well, I'm gonna click on allow and see what that does.
Okay.
I clicked on allow.
Okay, let's see what happens here. Yep, it looks like that's going to work.
I'm a novice here. But yeah.
So you guys can see the document in front of me, I take it.
Yeah,
Yeah, now I can see it, yes.
Really, they're just simple questions, but I think they're great conversation starters. And it's something we'll look at it on the shared ministry team. The passage of amendment to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws at GA 2024 remove the 7 principles and 6 sources of wisdom from the national UUA bylaws. On April 21st, 24, UUCJ members voted overwhelmingly 95% to reject this change. How do you feel now? Should UUCJ find a way to continue to focus on the 7 principles and 6 sources of wisdom as the spiritual basis of this community? So that was the first question. Number 2, our congregational community faces a path with 3 options, which are remain as a UUA associated congregation, become an independent congregation, or partner with another Unitarian association. That'd be us. What information do you need from the task force to make an informed decision on the path forward for UUCJ? Write your responses below. 3, how do you want to receive this information from the task force? Include all that apply: town hall meetings, emails, others. And then question 4, during the work of the task force on the amendment changes to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, what do you wish the task force had done differently? What would you like the task force to do this year that they didn't do last year? So these are things we can sort of model. I mean, as Stan said, Lynn said, we're sort of ahead of them a bit on this conversation, but I think there's ways we could tweak those questions and still have the, help the congregation feel like they're part of the process. But I thought it was an excellent start to the conversation.
Yeah,
Certainly the first 3 would be ones that we could be asking ourselves. The 4th one, I'm not so sure about, because they're asking them, what is your opinion about what they had done? But I see your hands up, Dick.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this last board meeting was a closed meeting, because they were talking about just what we've been talking about. And it's probably gotten the word of what's going on this.
right.
And I know the bigger issue here is, will they play hardball? Suppose a congregation says, well, we want to stay with the UA, but also work with, now or whatever. And they say, you can't do that. We're going to we're
Mhm.
not give you any more services to do that, or throw you out. Or if you just up and leave, totally, they could say, we'll never let you back in again. We don't know how they're going to react on that, but for them, that to play hardball would be very risky, because they might lose in the hardball. If some congregation, if they play too hard, a congregation said, we don't want anything more to do with you.
Yeah.
And some of the indications are that they might back off on some of the hardball fears. This has to do with the 5 congregations that this year are dissolving, and they decided to work with one of those up in New England that's going to combine with another church in the area, and work out some distribution of assets that was mutually agreeable. So in
Yeah.
that case, they decided not to play hardball in any way, but to work with those.
Well, that's all to be, we'll just wait and see. There isn't anything we can
We
do
don't know.
about what UUA does. We'll just react and respond.
But I don't think the legal issues, as Lynn says, I don't think the legal issues are really the big issue here.
Yeah. Let me move on in our agenda to item 5.6. I don't know about other board members, but I have had a number of people express concern about the loss of a welcoming and membership team. We did get one written request that we address this. Now, that was kind of addressed by earlier by Todd and the shared ministry team. Let me speak as the head usher, at least if we don't have anybody at the welcoming table during the first service. So people come in, and sometimes they just apparently walk by the welcoming table because they see the open doors, they head toward the doors. We have Diane Cook in the second service, bless her heart, unrecognized, other than me thanking her profusely at the welcoming table, and tries to snag people before they come into the church. And the ushers try to redirect people back to the welcoming table when we can. But we really, other than the ushers, kind of eyeballing people that have come in as somebody new, or maybe only their first or second time there, and serving kind of as trying to make people feel welcome. Some of the ushers to point out to Todd that this couple is new, and that gives Todd a chance to maybe identify them if they have children. We sometimes can make Stephanie aware that there are children that have come in, but it is an issue. The membership part of this person's and others' request or concern appears to be something that the shared ministry team might be looking at. Or excuse me, the ops team through this description that you gave, Todd, in your first point under other. But I just did want to bring this person's concern and others that have verbally talked to me and maybe to other board members that they would like to see. And then as Todd has pointed out, and Terry Anderson has pointed out too, we have to get out of the mindset of just thinking about physical people coming into our chapel and into our sanctuary and our friendship hall. We have new people coming online that I, for one, don't know how to deal with. And maybe there's some suggestions from you, Terry, about what could go on to be welcoming and maybe even approaching some solicitation of membership. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because you told me you had a list of about 50 email addresses.
Right.
So
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom. Yeah, we do have a Google group, and it has I think 51 members right now, and what that is are people who have at least attended one service. And what we do is every Thursday we send out one of the Zoom host sends out a little blurb about what the topic of the sermon is, and then a suggestion that they invite a friend or hope to see you, blah blah blah. And I was thinking that we haven't really exploited that group or used or worked with that group to talk about being more active in their support for UU Spokane, because I think that in many ways we're a bit of freeloaders. We get a wonderful service and we get a wonderful discussion afterwards, and we don't really we type into the text chat, here's the URL to donate, but we don't really twist arms or even give people an opportunity. And so after talking to folks this weekend, I'm going to make a more of a concerted effort to talk to them about, engaging with the community in terms of like when I see the list of Zoom addresses, I realize that these 50 people could go to any of these Zoom activities that are held during the week. I don't think any of them have, or very few of them anyways. And as well, I know there's a couple of us who pledge, but there's probably more who could if they were reminded of their opportunities. And of those 50 people, God doesn't require Unitarians to come to every service, so they don't. And but we do average probably about at 20 persons or so, 18 or something like that. So I think we've got a potential number, and I think given the quality of the services and the disheartenment of many Unitarians in both Canada and the US with the current services, that we could recruit and we could do a better job of recruiting. So that's been a bit my personal goal, to try to get more people involved than have been in the past. So.
well, just kind of, I'll get to you, Dick, in a minute, but let me follow up real quickly. Do when we get somebody comes in at our welcome table, they have an option to sign up on a little yellow sheet or a white sheet, I forget which is which, to get more information, get on the church mailing list so they get the Sun and they get the notices for the Zoom meetings. Do you have a way to do that a similar service for your people where they can sign up to be on our mailing list for the Sun and our Zoom links?
Yeah, I just, I don't know how to do that myself. I guess as I myself being a member, I guess I've been added, but I guess I can't promote it because I don't really know how does one get their name on that distribution list.
Is this something, Todd, the operations team could work with Terry or someone in that group that could do the equivalent of a yellow sheet or a white sheet, or a welcoming packet? We have a welcoming packet we hand out to anybody that's a little more interested, so that we could more intensely involve this group of people that we're now become part of our organization, but not quite as connected, I guess, as people who walk in our doors. I think you're
Muted, Todd.
muted, Todd.
Todd, you're muted.
Cannot hear you.
It wasn't worth hearing.
No,
Uh, I was just thinking, you know, if we had a QR code that said welcome package under it or something. And folks online could, if just as long as Todd and Shelley remember to put it up. In fact, I need to double check. I've been asking them to put a QR code up during the election each Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's going up or not, where it makes it easy for people who online who want to contribute to do so. So I'll double check on that again too, but I wonder, I don't, I mean, it would have to take them to something they can fill out digitally, right? We don't want to give them photocopies of the forms and they have to print them off and then fill them out. So just something real simple that they could fill out on their device and submit.
well, would you, Terry, and some of your folks, after this conversation and maybe comments that would come from Dick, since his hand is up, would you guys be able to work on that a bit and come back to the board with some thoughts about how to engage the online people more?
Sure, I could take that on, and yeah, and I guess the question is if we do, you know, we could create such an online form, but where do we get the content to send to them or whatever? I guess that I don't know how to make that connection happen.
That's what I'm saying. If it were a QR code that they would just access it on our website.
Okay.
You know, that it would basically open up if they scan the QR code, it would open up a website that would have a form they could fill out, a digital form.
Right.
Yeah, that form.
That would have to be Rebecca or somebody who has access to the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be to get them minimally their email address into our system, so they're getting the Sun and the Zoom links each week.
Yeah. And just a final comment, we do have those 50 emails. And so if the board or Rebecca or Todd or anybody wants to send something to those 50 people, I guess it would be better if those 50 people were in the normal list so they could do it all at once. But if there's some reason that they want to get in touch with the 50 people, they can just let me know and I will do that.
I would like to see that followed up upon, if that's something the operations team could do, unless they have an objection to doing that.
Well, I'll have to find out, and there shouldn't be an objection. The question is it doable or not? So that's the biggest thing, you know, something that people can do easily without interrupting what you're doing on Sundays. So, you know.
Well, even if Terry sent you his email list of 50 email addresses, wouldn't that be fairly simple to enter into whatever group list Rebecca and Michelle use?
Yeah, do we have names for them, Terry? Or
Yeah. I got
think-
a name and an email. That I don't have physical addresses, but
I'm thinking it'd be very nice to have not just names and emails, but telephone numbers. That people can be contacted or send text, as well as, of course, at least the city kind of location. And I'd be willing to be on a team with you, Terry, that would actually contact people. But I prefer to be able to actually phone them and say, have you thought about contributing? And we'd like to know, first of all, which one of those 50 people, which of those are actually pledging or contributing. That also.
I would hold off on that idea.
Yeah.
I think that's
all
getting-
we need is contacts right now.
Yeah, well, at some point, I think a personal contact always makes a big difference.
I also
When
think.
we're ready, I'd like to work on that. Yeah.
I also, I mean, I think it makes a difference for some people, Dick, not all people. Some people want to hide behind things and do not want to be contacted. And I would want to make sure that those 50 people who gave you their email list want to be contacted, want to have our emails stuff, that our email stuff sent to their email box.
Well,
So-
would Terry and Dick then work on that with the guidance that Lynn has suggested that is a sense of somewhat of privacy, at least getting permission?
Yeah, well, see, the part of the privacy is we don't have their phone numbers. We can-
Well,
if you're willing to give us your phone
please,
number. we can-
please work on this together. I have to get out of my agenda or never get done with this meeting.
Right, right.
I don't
Okay.
know if we'll have to figure it out, Tom. It's a little more complicated, I think.
Well, that's why I'd like people to work on it.
Questions and I mean, Terry's right. The easiest thing is to send his email list. And then we add those people to our mailing list, but getting permission then becomes another step in Terry's process, right? Would you like to receive, would you like to receive our mailings or our newsletters or whatever? That would have to be something set up in advance. So we have to look into that. I don't know if it's possible. I mean, it probably is possible. I just don't know how and how difficult it would be. So we have to look into it. That's all I can say. There is the reality that people are existing digitally. So sometimes we have to just make verbal appeals and hope that they will respond to those. But
Right, well, it's not up to the board to do nuts and bolts is my theory. So we've got a group of people that seem interested in doing this. So would like to have a report back at the next meeting, if we could, and I'll put that down as a item for the next agenda.
Sure. I will bring it up at the next Sunday and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and you have a month, because our November meeting would be as yet to be determined, but at least at the middle or the end of November. The next item under reports, and we're running really short of time, so we're gonna have to go along here, was a policy proposal for a member-generated congregational meeting resolution. And Justin and I worked on a possible addition to the policy and procedures manual, which was suggested at the last meeting and kind of agreed to. And the board members have this. My suggestion is that we have a first reading with no discussion and that we deal with this at the November meeting. But the suggestion that we came up with was adding, it didn't seem to fit anywhere in the policy and procedures manual when we looked at it, where would it fit? So we were suggesting adding the number 5, which would be entitled, and I'll read it, which would be entitled Member-Generated Congregational Meeting Resolution. And then followed by a brief description, member-generated resolutions proposed to come before a congregational meeting must not appear on the agenda for such a meeting until subject to and in compliance with the following. And it's A, B, and C. A, submitted with a minimum of 10 supportive signatures of members or submitted by a UUCS team or group recognized by the operations team. B, must submit to the board at least 6 weeks prior to such a meeting for the board to review for consistency and compliance with federal and state laws, the articles of incorporation or bylaws, and the board policy and procedures document. And C, that it must be in compliance with the following, being the board by majority vote of the currently serving trustees may modify, alter the wording of the proposed resolution for consistency while maintaining the spirit and intent of the proposed resolution. And that would be that, and all you board members have that. And that would be something that I'd like you to give some thought about, changes. I see one little wording change I need to make. Instead of the word of, it has to be the word or. So that would be a first reading of this, not to be commented on at this point. Then the second item under reports was in-person attendance, which was from when a group sat down, a board member sat down, and this would be by Justin, and you all had the board members received some thoughts from Justin on that, I believe. Now I'm not seeing that. You're gonna have to talk about it, Justin, and then submit something so that it can be included.
I have a paper which I've written about one page, less than one page in front of me now, and I can discuss it now or submit it. I'd be happy to discuss it now.
Well, I think you need to read through your list at least, and then it'll appear attached to the minutes. And it's some things the board's gonna have to continue talking about in the future because we're shortly running out of time here. But if you would read down your list of things that might be useful to attract persons to come to
Okay.
who are Spokaneites to come to a church on Sunday mornings, some of which we've already discussed.
Yeah, I have 9 items on that list. I'll be happy to go over them.
Yeah.
Okay, first one is monthly potlucks. That's been discussed before, and Todd expressed some interest in that this meeting on a different subject. But monthly potlucks was one of the more popular ones. Second group that would meet, or if could meet, would be a discussion of the sermon, basically feedback. Feedback of the sermon, feedback of the books or ideas mentioned in the service. And my screen went blank. Is everybody still with me? All of a sudden, I'm not seeing anybody.
Mhm.
We're here.
Okay, all right. Back. The third was engagement groups. So in this group, people would meet and talk and get to know each other, and people would bring up their favorite books, favorite movies, favorite recipes. Basically, it's a way to meet and greet people at the church. There also might be meeting and greeting games. That was idea number 3, engagement groups. The fourth group is this church is big on ecology, so this would be your favorite ecology idea. So you get to bring up the idea that will enhance ecology, biodiesel or the solar engines or whatever. Or the fifth one was restarting the old problem solvers group. It's bit the dust. It's no longer exists, so it's gone. Item number 6 was a Heather Cox Richardson discussion group. Most of the people in the church, it appears, are following Heather Cox Richardson in her talks. And she is so popular that I think they may want to have a Heather Cox Richardson group. Item 7 would be put on by me, which would be I will personally take the responsibility for running this, but it's dealing with spam, malware, computer spyware, invasive computer cookies, email phishing schemes, and so on. There are about 1,000 simple techniques that people are not using that'll protect you from that. And I could easily bring in laptops and go over those. Item 8 would be an AI discussion group. Item 9 is off subject. It wasn't a group, but person brought up the idea that we should have the photo sessions after the church and create the membership books. That's a little bit off topic, but it was brought up for something that could occur after church. So those are 9 ideas.
Okay, that is good. One thing I missed the treasurer's report. Let me go back to item 7, and then we'll do a summary of income enhancement. And we're going to have to postpone some of this discussion, more detailed discussion, after these presentations are done. But did you submitted a written report, Dick, a short written report? Do you want to read that into the record so that so it's on record in this recorded meeting, and then it'll be attached to the minutes?
You want me to literally read it or?
Well, you could summarize each point, but we don't have time for a lot of extraneous information. So what you put in that I'm reading was fairly concise and important.
Yeah,
So
so
if
I
you
think,
could summarize those 4 points that you.
let me just summarize a few points. And the major thing was we took $40,000 out in reserves to actually pay our full expenses this last year. I wondered, well, how long can we continue doing that kind of thing? And when I looked in the balance sheet, we had a lot in the bank, 160,000 in the bank, but most of it is already allocated to various funds. There was only another 40,000 in the reserve budget in the bank that would only carry us one more year at the same rate. And then if you look at what's going on, I look carefully at the pledges, actually increased only 4% this last year. They increased, but only 4%, which is about $10,000. $10,000 is only a quarter of that 40,000 deficit right there. The other thing is we're planning, our budget actually says we should be tripling the fundraising. We're just having the auction now, and it looks like it would take maybe basically 3 auctions to get up to a $20,000 fundraising. And I don't know if that's realistic. It may be. I think it is realistic to at least double, maybe triple. But again, even that wouldn't get rid of all the $40,000 deficit. And the other big thing that I don't know exactly how to handle is that this last year, we collected only 90% of the pledge money that was actually, 90% of the pledge amount. We only collected that much. And I think a number of larger donors either left or died and things like that. Most churches historically have collected 95% on average. That would actually make a huge difference. We have last year we had $270,000 in pledges. 10% was $27,000. This year, if we got only 5%, instead of 10% loss, that'd be $14,000. That would make a really, really huge difference. But but the bottom line is it doesn't look like we're going to easily get rid of that deficit in 1 year, and we couldn't afford to do it. We could do it at most 1 more year. So I thought that a reasonable kind of rough goal would be to try to cut that deficit by half each year, at least. I think we have a chance to do more than that, but I don't know. But if we do things right, I think we could, instead of having 40,000 like we did last year, we can only take 20,000 out of reserves. That's closer to where our actual budget is. And I think that's possible. But then we will probably have to think about doing the same thing the following year. If it's 20,000 going down to 10,000, you see, it's something like that. And if we actually want to start paying Todd, well, then we need to do a lot more. But that's not even the cards for at least a couple of years yet, it looks like. But at least for right now, I just want to give people sort of an idea of what we need to do to be sustainable. We need to drop this taking from reserves by maybe a half or more each year for the next 3 years, let's say.
Well, let me ask a couple of summarizing questions. You said fundraising last year was only about 7,000. Do you mean other fundraising other than pledges and
That's the event fundraising, like the auction.
okay, so
The pledges are totally separate. Yeah.
and you're saying that this year's budget has that raised to 20,000?
Right.
Okay, and this year's
And
auction.
that's about tripling the,
Yes.
like I said, like 3 auctions or something like that.
Right, and this year's auction has a target of a little over 5,000. So our target for this year's auction isn't even the 7,000
Right.
that we didn't rate that we had for last year.
Yeah,
So
so we did some extra. So that's a challenge. I mean, historically, like the Saltwater Church I'm in, a lot of other places, they can raise, easily, a church our size should be able to raise $15,000 from an auction, and we're not doing that. And it sure was, you see, so there's obviously something we're missing there. I don't know, I'm not an expert in fundraising, but there's something we're missing.
okay, well, I think you made an important point that we're not meeting our pledge. We're short of the amount of money we collected when we've had these pledges, and our fundraising is not is very inadequate. External fundraising is inadequate, and our reserve fund is being threatened because of these issues.
Hmm.
So let me
Wanna
move
butt
then.
in here, and not to point fingers or anything, but
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
why that 20,000 was in there, because at least the last incarnation of the board agreed that this fundraising would become a priority of this board. Now, that didn't, I guess, get passed on as well as it should, or perhaps it shouldn't have been put on a board that hadn't agreed to it. But that's why it's in there, right? That's why I've said repeatedly that we were hoping that would be the top priority of this year's board, because we are counting on somehow raising fundraising revenue that we've not done before.
Yeah, and that is an item. In fact, that's the next report, which came from a little subcommittee um, of Doug and me. And I'll read through this, and again, it's gonna have to be, it's one thing to come up with ideas. It's another thing to make it happen, and that's where we're gonna be in trouble.
Yes.
So I'll read through this so that it's on the record. Some of this we've talked about, and then we're gonna have to have this as you said, Todd, this is rising to the top as one of the primary things that we have to deal with this year, the UUA, UUCS separation possibility, and then this. So I'll read them off. Hold a potluck kick, well, excuse me, this is a report that you were going to read, Doug. Did you want to mention this, Doug, since you and I worked on this and you made this report?
It's fine for you to go ahead and do it. I have emailed it to everybody that should be tuned in right now. If you feel like it, we don't have time to discuss it. So, handle it however you wish, Tom.
Okay, well, I just want to read this into the record so that it's in our record.
Okay.
And some of it we've talked about, hold a potluck kickoff at the beginning of the generosity campaign and try to arouse enthusiasm and maybe some early on donations. Hold a fundraiser art sale after getting members and others to donate artworks of all sorts, either completely to the church or a portion to the church is what's happened in the past. I'll have a monthly, and this is something that's I've heard mentioned, but it's pretty radical. Having one of our monthly special collections be for UUCS. I mean, we're a pretty good charity when you get right down to it. And maybe one of those ones for that, one of those months ought to be special donations for ourselves. Compile a list of local nonprofits and communicate to them that UUCS has rental space available. And this was brought on by the Northwest Bluegrass Society renting our facility on a year's basis. Compile a list of local wedding consultants and send them notices that we have a space that might be used for weddings if people are looking for a wedding location. Ask Madeline and Dan Gore to create a music concert, promoting it well, and share the proceeds with them. These would be musical people within our community. Communicate by email, perhaps monthly, to the Sun email list, explaining that we do have a financial crisis or a financial issue, and we're asking other people for suggestions rather than just what Doug and I came up with, and have a special email address that people could respond to. Sending out a simple, carefully crafted questionnaire or survey by email to as many UU congregations as possible, asking them what they do for external fundraising. Contact the Pacific Western region with a similar questionnaire. Contact some selected nonprofits with another questionnaire asking what these nonprofits do to raise funds. Placing ads in local media, radio, TV, Facebook, inviting nonprofits to consider us as a meeting place for a reasonable fee, of course. Enhance income from our annual auction with a potluck dinner, followed by a live in-person auction, along with remote bidding via Zoom, and maybe even some entertainment between the dinner and the live auction. And that came historically from my recollections of the past when our auctions were only live. And sometimes we raised over $25,000 at those because wine was And the wine was available and people just get a little looser when they have a little wine. But we could commit, then we combined them into some that were posted on the wall as silent auctions, and then we still had a live auction, maybe only 6 or 8 items. And we had people like Harold Blaze or Bill Cahill, or those of you who remember Bill Cahill, who were our auctioneers, and they were quite, did quite a bit of performing. Enhance our income from annual auction with a potluck, followed by a live in-person auction. Excuse me, that's already been, I mentioned that. And then having outreach tables at farmers markets or other events. All these take people to do things, but this was our brainstorming. And we could come back to this and decide whether we could do any of these or should try to undertake any of them. And then, of course, we need people. So that was intended to bring forward our ideas. And that gets us down to old business, which is the item of considering the replacement or revision of the current earmail use policy that came from Doug and me after rescinding it did not work out in the one meeting that went place. So again, that's low priority with regard to all the other critical issues. So we're going to defer that to the November meeting and maybe even further than that. Now we're down to the item of, well, we've come to 10:30, so we're almost done here, but do I hear any complaints or objections to extend the meeting long enough to complete appointing our trustee for the next meeting, exec committee meeting, and deciding on when our November meetings would be?
No problem.
Hearing no objections.
I have time.
Who would like, I need somebody else, a floating trustee, to be in our exec committee meeting? I don't think we've had you, Dick. Is that something that we could do for you or to join us for an exec committee meeting to put together the agenda? And we don't know exactly when it would be because that's the next thing. I guess maybe before we do that, we should decide on the next item, item 11, about when the meetings would be. And then Dick, you could maybe check your calendar to see if you could join us. So we have Thanksgiving. We have a meeting, a normal meeting schedule would be Thanksgiving Eve. Is that a problem for anybody, or should we move it up a week? I'm okay with it on Thanksgiving Eve, but maybe have more flexibility than other people do.
I don't have any problem with that.
I don't have a problem with it.
I'm fine.
I'm kind of a maybe.
Okay, Todd.
I'll have guests from out of town, so you could meet them without me, but
Okay, how about you, Dick?
Should be okay.
Well, let's keep it that way on it would be on the 20th. If I got my calendar right, let me make sure I didn't make a mistake.
27th.
27th is the meeting executive on the 20th.
Well, let me go. Let's see, the 4th. Yeah, it's the 27th. So it would be the 27th, not what I wrote in there as the 20th. So, and then that would be the exec committee meeting would be on the 20th. And okay, let's decide on that. So going back to you, Dick, would you be able to join us for the exec committee meeting on the 20th? We meet at 4 o'clock. It only takes about half an hour, maximum 40 minutes.
20th. What time is that usually?
4 o'clock. And I have an agenda pretty much, well, I have an agenda all made up. The only question is, do we add it, subtract, or change it, or anything?
I guess,
that?
Yeah, at 4 o'clock I could do it.
Okay, I got you down for that. And we've decided to keep the meeting schedule, even though it's Thanksgiving Eve for the meeting. And there's a member input, and I see that name Gordon Larson is there. I don't know whether that's Gordon or Jean or both. Do you have any input?
That's me, Jean.
Okay,
No, I kind of got into the meeting late, so yeah, I don't have any input at this time.
okay. Okay, thank you. Well, that said, unless there's any objections, I would adjourn the meeting. Are there any objections?
No.
Okay, the meeting's adjourned at 5:41. And thank you, everybody, for your participation. We really touched on some big topics, and we'll get into them more next month.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Mhm.